Behold, my Patreon supporter FreeWilliam asks, what are some good clone weapons for Excalibur Umbra, Equinox with Duality, Wukong's clone, etc.? Note that this is different than asking about Spectres. These are clones that get the mods on your weapons, so that's a really important difference, which means they can do significant damage. That's the big difference. Obviously, there are other differences, but the big thing is that yes, these can do significant damage. The overarching way that I'm going to recommend approaching this question is essentially not to emphasize the clone's performance over yours, but to strike a balance. Now, it's possible to go too far in the other direction, too. I'm going to give you an example with Sentinel weapons. So currently, at the time of this recording, you can put set mods on Sentinel weapons, and they'll affect the rest of your loadout, and that seems to be intended, seems to be something we're keeping. But the thing is, like, if they do literally nothing for the Sentinel weapon, or, let's say for a Cooper or Kavat when you use set mods on them, if it does actually nothing, it's not a very efficient use of a mod slot because you're kind of losing a whole mod slot there for a weaker benefit on your loadout. And it's like a mod slot on your Sentinel or Sentinel weapon or Cooper or Kavat or whatever is certainly worth less than a mod slot on your frame or your main weapons, but it's not worth nothing. Like, there are things that can be good in those slots. So the trick is to find the amount of value that those slots are worth and not to waste them using things like that. And this is no different for weapons, basically. So you're choosing a weapon for Excalibur Umbra to use, or multiple weapons for Excalibur Umbra to use when you are in your operator mode, and it's like, it's not that it's not worth anything to have it be good in Excalibur Umbra, but you don't want to sacrifice performance. You want to use a weapon you would want to use. That's what I'm saying. Likewise with Duality, Equinox, and Wukong. There are weapons that perform better in their hands, and we'll get into those, but you wouldn't want to sacrifice your performance entirely, or their performance entirely. You want something that's a good compromise. The first thing I want to mention is the sort of elephant in the room, which are heavy weapons, so arc guns, atmospheric arc guns. I actually forget if these work on Excalibur Umbra, but they do, for example, work on Duality Equinox. This is a good place to store a weapon that is useful on a clone that you don't necessarily want to use all the time. For example, on Duality Equinox, I personally really like the Grattler. This is good because it's just very easy to hit enemies with the Grattler. It does a lot of damage in a big area. You don't have to worry about your clone just like missing or shooting something you don't want to hit because it hits like the whole map. It's literally a machine gun of bombs. You're not going to miss, your clone is going to be fine. And again, the whole theme here is to make sure the AI doesn't screw you over. If you're relying on some backup from your clone or whatever, you want to make sure that the AI doesn't just like do something stupid and then you get no value. So something that has area of effect is really good. I believe Grattler also has innate blast damage, which is great. A classic way to take advantage of support weapons that you don't directly control, that the AI controls, whether it's a Sentinel weapon or your Kuber or Kavat or a clone or a Spectre or whatever, is to use crowd control. And I do think that is a strong choice. So anything with innate blast or that you're going to build blast on, you probably wouldn't want to. But with innate blast, for the Grattler, I like to build gas on top of the blast, personally. So that's an option. That's a way you can go. Now, as for other weapons, I would say there are kind of a couple of categories that strike me besides just area of effect weapons. Obviously, you don't take self-damage from your clone, so run the Tsar and let them bomb the whole map, and who cares if it falls all over you because it won't do damage. Use the Kolstar. That's impossible to survive shooting normally, but you can just have your clone shoot it. So those are options. Another one that I really like are sniper rifles and burst weapons. I like these because, so the burst weapons, the clone is kind of forced to commit more shots to the engagement. So whenever the clone's AI decides to shoot something with a burst weapon, they're kind of committing to more shots. You're like forcing the AI to fight better by making them shoot more bullets. They have no choice but to shoot more bullets. So like Tiburon Prime is pretty good. Run that, 100 munitions. I also really like 100 munitions. I'll get back to that in a sec, but it has to do with sniper rifles as well. And this is kind of in the category of like making the impact noticeable. So when you have your clone do something, there are kind of two schools of thought about this too. You could just abandon them doing damage, but if you want them to do good damage, I think you want to go for spike damage. So like randomness is kind of okay. If they shoot something and you don't get your slash procs from 100 munitions, or you don't get your crit from your sniper rifle, and again we'll get to that, It's like whatever, but then when you do get the crit, it's a big burst of damage and you actually notice and you can react to that. You can see an enemy that's mostly at full health that just get bursted down, and then you're like, okay, that enemy can be killed quickly, and you can use that to actually save time. If your Spectre, on the other hand, or your clone, whatever, is just adding small amounts of damage to stuff, but not shooting constantly, it's like it might add damage to something you're then going to do a huge crit against, and then it won't even matter that it shot it. So I think it's better overall. I certainly think it's more exciting, it's more fun to go for the big spike damage, so you really notice when damage happens, and then you can react to it and you gain something from that. Again, conversely, if there's an enemy sneaking up on you from behind and you don't know, I would rather it be outright dead or just have nothing happen to it, rather than it always taking a little bit of damage. You know what I mean? Because you ultimately gain very little if it just takes a little damage. You still have to go kill it. Like, you need to turn around and kill it, or you get stabbed in the back by a butcher or whatever. Whereas if sometimes it just outright dies, then some amount of the time your clone is going to save you, you know? So I like that. That's the style I prefer. So sniper rifles, they're good because the AI is really good at aiming, and they do a lot of damage in one shot, and they have punch through just in case the AI shoots into a crowd in a funny way, and they're mostly pretty good with 100 munitions. So it's a good mix of things, and also sniper rifles are used, like, they're just good anyway. It's a really good build-around weapon, so you have a sniper rifle in your loadout, you kind of know your other weapon should be something a little bit more mid-range, have some higher rate of fire to deal with like nullifiers or some such, and then you get your melee weapon, and then it just creates a nice rounded loadout. Bring the Grattler as your heavy weapon, and you've got AoE, something with high fire rate, and something with low fire rate, and it's, there you go, look at that. So I do think that this is a topic worth considering, and I feel like those are some of the better approaches I'd recommend, like area of effect weapons or cred control weapons, burst weapons, and snipers. But there are also a lot of like really weird, unintuitive things that I've heard people mention. So this is definitely a topic to like ask everyone about this, and you will get a lot of different interesting answers. I'm sure in the comments there will be a lot of pretty spicy answers to this question. I always hear good stuff when people talk about this. But the truth is, I wouldn't go choosing a weapon just because it is good with your clone ability. Use something you're gonna use. Just use a weapon you want, and then after you narrow it down to a selection you want to use, sure, pick the one that makes more sense with the clone. But again, you know, you're the one shooting it reliably. You're the one who's going to be experiencing it more. So make it something you want to use. Don't just use something that's good with the clone. I might not go so far as to do something like run the Colstar, but I hate the Colstar, and I'm only running the Colstar to use with my clone. You could do that. Like, if you're the kind of person that doesn't mind that and doesn't swap weapons a lot, that's fine. I just feel like that's maybe going a little far in the direction of like how much impact is that really going to have, and you're losing a weapon yourself. And so I don't know. That's just how I feel about it. I hope this was helpful. I want to thank FreeWilliam very much for their support and their patience. FreeWilliam, you asked a lot of questions that were really interesting, and they've kind of been backed up, so I'm very happy to get done with them. This was an interesting question. They always are. So thank you very much for your support, and I will talk to you all again very soon.